Barrick. Guess who's Barrick back again?
This is your fucking intro, so you can banter as much as you goddamn want about whatever you want, princess.
What up? And welcome to another episode of Brotherhood Without Manners. I got it right that time. Hell yeah. I am Nate. My co-host here is Zach.
What up?
We are a full spoiler reread podcast of George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series, beginning with A Game of Thrones. And man, what a journey it's been so far. Did you write that? That was beautiful.
I did, thank you.
I think you're a liar.
I am.
And a fat mouth.
Wow.
Yep. So, we don't have any new news since we're recording this right after the last one that we recorded.
You know,
but sneaking them back, a little peek behind the curtain, as you would say when you bitch about it every time I do it. Anyway, this week we're going to be reading... This week, yeah, it is weekly, because last episode that they heard was the Season 8, Episode 1 premiere. So, this one will be, what, Ned 4? Ned 4. And so we just finished reading John 3, and John 3 was cool, man.
John 3 is good. He arrived at the wall, did some sparring,
made
some training,
some friends.
Made some weird friends.
After they were enemies, and then made new enemy.
Yeah, made a new enemy from Sir Alistair Thorne.
So it's been a harsh reality for Mr. Snow, but it is what it is. So Barrick's being a little obnoxious today, our dog, and so you may hear him a few times throughout the show. We apologize for that, but we just can't shut him up because he says what he wants.
He rules the house.
He does what he wants.
There must always be a Stark in Winterfell.
That's a good point.
I guess. Anyway, our buddy Ned is arriving through the bronze doors of the Red Keep. He's sore, he's tired, he's hungry, and he's irritable. It's been a long ride. Upon his arrival...
I bet he's got some roids, man. Riding on that horse all forever.
Maybe he's a little chafed.
Some chafing. Just in general, he's pretty miserable from traveling for a long time now. At least a couple months they've been traveling every day.
It's a decent track. But upon his arrival, the King's Steward informs him that Grand Maester Pycelle has convened a meeting of the small council, and the hand's presence is requested. Ned believes that tomorrow would be better, but seeing as it's his first day really on the job, he doesn't want to offend anybody. So he says, yeah, just give me a minute to change because I'm pretty gross looking. Then he realizes that he doesn't really have any clothes, but the steward will happily oblige him. Ned is being given Lord Aaron's old chambers in the Tower of the Hand.
He changes and then basically immediately heads straight to this small council meeting.
Well, he first tells...
he talks to...
Van Poole, his steward, and tells him to see his daughters to their bedchambers and to have Jory keep them there. That Arya specifically is not to go exploring. And then, he...
Which I feel is the same kind of thing he would say had Bran not taken a tumble if Bran was there. And make sure Bran and Arya stay in their rooms. They're not to go exploring. Yeah. Because I feel like this would be Bran's fucking dream.
Oh my!
Like for climbing, like,
everything's connected.
Everything.
Up high, the bridges and the Baileys.
Could you imagine sitting up on top of like the Sept of Baelor and like all the different shit he?
Yeah, Bran would be in his prime.
That'd be cool.
So Ned changes and goes into the council chambers, bone tired and dressed in borrowed clothing, to find the four of the small council members waiting for him.
Now, I really like this picture that Martin paints for us when he walks into this room.
The chamber.
He's used to, where he's at, where they've got, some brush thrown on the ground for their carpeting. And so he walks in this room, and it's lavishly furnished with Mirish carpets, a large screen with a painting of like all sorts of hundreds of beasts and animals. I think it said from the Summer Isles. There's tapestries from Norvos, Qohor, and Lys. There's even a pair of Valyrian sphinxes that have eyes polished of garnet, and that sounds cool. I want some of those.
Yeah, the sphinxes are flanking either side of the door as Ned comes in, and it's this really fancy, elaborate room that Ned's not used to. He's used to the cold rigidity of the North, but As he comes in, the counselor that Ned likes the least, Sir Varys the eunuch, not Sir at all, Varys the eunuch, accosts him the moment he enters. And Varys, of course, is very sorry to hear about the troubles on the King's Road with Arya and his children.
And he does almost this 180, like it's what he's supposed to do, but fuck, he goes up and, I'm sorry about what happened on the King's Road. We've all been praying for Joffrey.
Yeah.
And it's like, yo, fuck Joffrey.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way of the land, though. The prince is always right. And it says that as he sort of disengages himself, his hand leaves a powder stain on Ned's sleeve.
Did you mention, I wasn't paying attention, that Ned said that he was the one that
he liked the least?
Yeah, yes. Yeah. And I really think that's funny and interesting. Sorry, I banged the table.
He also notes that Varys smells as foul and sweet as flowers on a grave, which is a good picture.
It's funny because I feel like it's just, well, I suppose it could be different smell because he's very much that way, but I kind of imagine that it's the same thing that Kat smelled when she encountered him, but it's his comparison is different than hers.
Yeah.
Hers was like lavender and something or other, whereas his is grave fucking flowers.
Death and flowers, yeah.
Like,
sweet and horrible.
Now, do you think that means that that's any kind of comparison to his sister, Lyanna, who died in a bed of blood and roses,
I
death
think
and
it's
roses?
mainly, I mean, maybe Ned recognizes the scent. But,
and that's it.
But Ned disengages himself from Varys and crosses the room over to where Renly is speaking with what could only be Littlefinger.
Oh, this is the page with the spider blood on it I was tweeting about because the ice spiders. I killed a spider and it squished its guts all over my page.
Gross.
But yeah, so I love Renly, man. He cracks me the fuck up. So yeah, Ned walks up to, as you mentioned, Renly, who's talking to Littlefinger, and he's a little bit shook, like by how much. Because the last time we saw Renly, he was like 8 years old.
Yeah, Renly was 8 when Robert had won his throne.
And now that he's grown, he looks just
very
like he
to
remembers Robert growing up.
And it sort of trips Ned out for a minute. Renly greets Ned, and Ned mentions this to him, that you look a lot like your brother. And Renly says a poor imitation, and Littlefinger quips in that he's better dressed, though. And Ned notices that that's actually very true. Renly is dressed in some ridiculous clothing.
And so he says that Lord Renly spends more on clothing than half of the ladies at the court. And I think, it's a funny line, and it's obviously hinting at Renly's nature. Not that is important. And which I think is great, because Renly says, well, there's worse crimes. The way you dress, for one.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the best jibe, like.
Back and forth.
I feel like Renly would have made a great king. Like, because
he's all right.
Because, granted, he had that sense of entitlement he shouldn't have. He had no right to the throne. But had Stannis also lost his claim or died or anything like that.
Blasphemy.
I agree. This is some tinfoily shit, but I feel like if he was actually the king and people listened to him, he would have done good things.
He would have done good things, but to me, Joffrey is the polar extreme. You have Joffrey at one end of the spectrum, Renly's at the complete opposite, but it doesn't make a good king. Renly would be too soft for the throne. Like, while he doesn't need to be Joffrey, we need a Daenerys where they've got that mixture of bloody ferocity and
I feel like in a time of peace, he could maintain
peace. Like, that's the thing, is you can't fuck it up. Like, nah, fuck Renly. You can't fucking apply restrictions to your kinghood. Like, yeah, Renly would be great at ruling through a time of peace. Who the fuck knows if that's, like, possible? Like, fuck off, Renly. You don't get to dictate, like, what your terms of your rule are going to be. You don't know when war breaks out.
If a good king is only as good as his queen, he'd have Loras Tyrell sitting there giving him some good information. And so it would be a good thing. I think it'd be pretty good.
I disagree that Renly would be a good king. Anywho.
Either way, he's still a funny motherfucker.
Yeah.
So.
But then this is when Littlefinger is eyeing Ned with a smile on his lips.
I have to say, this
section borders on insolence.
And I hope you picked up on it, but I feel like you might have missed a little bit. So. Ned responds with a chill in his voice. The sly arrogance of the comment rankled him. I understand you knew my brother Brandon as well. And this is, Ned saying,
Yeah,
fuck
yeah.
you, dude. Like,
My brother fucked
don't
you
talk
up.
about my wife. And so, again, Renly just guffaws at this. And so I love how
Renly gets a
comedic
chuckle.
he gets it. And so Littlefinger says, he says he met him and he left him a little token of his gratitude. But then he says, did Brandon speak of me often? Littlefinger's about to go in on Ned hard right here. And so Ned says often and with some heat. He said, and it said that Ned was hoping to end it. He had no patience with this game they played, this dueling with words. And so then Littlefinger says, I should have thought that the heat ill suits you, Starks. Here in the South, they say you are all made of ice and melt when you ride below the neck. If you've seen the movie Wild Wild West, there's a time when Will Smith and the villain, who's Legless, start having some back and forth quips. They're a little racist in their tone. And that's what they're doing right here. And Littlefinger ends it with this just uppercut of, last time some Starks came down, your brother was melted by the Mad King. You guys don't do well down here because your dad got melted. And so he's making this direct, subtle comparison that your brother was burned alive down here. Fuck you, Ned.
While still embodying his whole house of the cold Starks. Littlefinger's on some other level shit. Yeah, it's this verbal sparring where it's friendly and it's polite and it's cordial, but it's really fucking not.
That's
brutal
undertones.
And so Ned kind of gets the last word here, telling him that I don't plan to melt anytime soon, Lord Baelish, and he walks away.
And ends that duel
and he moves to the table. Greets this old.
I hate how much respect he has for this fucking.
He's built to have. I mean, this whole paragraph is just a big long description of how regal and wise.
And I'm gonna call out the book because Martin points in here a little bit at the bullshit of it too, though. And so it says that I don't know if you have the physical description. I didn't write that part.
I just have that he's a bald.
He's just a
man.
bald, white whiskers,
white whiskered old man.
His Meister's collar was no simple choker as Lewin's wore, but 24 heavy chains wound together into a ponderous metal necklace made of every metal known to man. But then it goes on to say that it was also adorned. And now that doesn't just mean these links that he's got in there. That means he's decorated his collar with emeralds and rubies and garnets. And, not that I'm saying there's any kind of magical aspect to it. But this motherfucker who's supposed to be of the Citadel, not supposed to take part, he's taking wealth from the crown and
promoting himself.
He's wearing ice.
Yeah.
Yo, this guy's iced up in this fucking joint. He's like, you rickety old motherfucker. You should be in prison for embezzlement. So where's Tyrion Lannister? Where is he?
He's at the wall.
Get this motherfucker.
Get him. Yeah, no. Pycelle's a piece of shit and basically just says that he wants to begin this meeting or he's going to fall asleep.
Because he's a little tired.
Yeah, because he's tired. Yeah. So Ned takes a seat and it's the one that's next to the king's emptied embroidered chair. And this is when Varys sort of gives him the "We serve at your pleasure, Lord Stark" spiel. And as everyone sits down, it really strikes Ned that he doesn't belong here in this room with these men. And he remembers Robert saying that I'm surrounded by flatterers and fools. And Ned looks around and he begins wondering which are the flatterers and which are the fools.
But then even he, at that point, is like, you know what? I think I know.
So who is it?
So
who are the flatterers and who are the fools?
No, I don't think it's as easy
I think there's only one fool, and I think it's Renly.
Yes,
I think the rest are flatterers.
I think the rest are all good at
I don't think that Martin intends it to be broken down, but I think simplistically, Renly plays the fool, and the rest. I mean, Pycelle grovels.
Epitome of
Varys grovels. Baelish grovels when needed. They all are willing to take their crow when the time comes, and they're flatterers. My prince, my king. We lit candles at the sept for Joffrey's fucking stupid little wound he took in your scrap. So I thought that was a fun little who's who. But
so Ned wanted to wait for there's only 5 of us here. There's not everybody. The king isn't here, and maybe we should wait. Littlefinger mentions, they all start mentioning, really.
Varys kind of breaks it down that Stannis left for Dragonstone, and Varys is probably, no doubt, with the king, escorting him. Jesus. And Ned suggests that they wait, and Renly kind of laughs and says, then we'll be in for a really long sit, because the king don't attend these shits.
He leaves a lot of the small things, the coins and the farming and some of the justice to the small council.
Which, I mean, it's a bullshit way of saying Robert's a shitty king. He doesn't have any interest in this managing of the shit. But Renly says he does give us commands from time to time, and he pulls a rolled paper from his sleeve and hands it down to Ned, and it bears the unbroken royal seal, and Ned reads it.
Which that means Renly already knows what it says.
Yes.
Because Ned reads it, and he's looking at it in disbelief.
Well, I mean, honestly, like, do you think this is any surprise? This is Robert's
absolutely
MO
not.
here.
Absolutely
like, I think everyone expected.
I think that they could have guessed it anyway.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So Ned reads the letter with mounting belief, and at this point at the table, you have to believe everybody already knows what the fuck it says. Robert wants a tournament for the hand of the king, because that's the way Robert is.
And it's going to be expensive. They kind of talk about how much it's going
to cost. And Ned thinks to himself, was there no end to Robert's folly?
Yes.
Like, is this dude ever done making a goon of himself? And Renly announces before Ned even sort of hands around the letter that Robert wants a tournament in honor of Ned's appointment. And so we've got 40,000 to the champion, 20,000 to the second place champion, 20,000 to the melee winner, and 10,000 to the top archer. 90,000 total, plus food, drink, and entertainment that they all sort of break down and start talking about.
Which is when they drop the news that the crown, at first Ned thinks it's just a $3 million in debt, but it turns out is $6 million.
Well, Littlefinger sort of drops bombs here. He first reveals, one, treasury's empty, bro. Like, crown ain't got this shit, and has been for years. And they owe Lord Tywin Lannister 3 million dragons. So what's another 100,000? And this is when Ned is like, oh shit, like, the crown is more than 6 million in debt, and that's
than 3 million.
Or more than 3 million, and that's when Littlefinger is like, no, we're 6 million.
Because we also owe money to to Lord Tyrell, to the Iron Bank of Bravos,
some
and
Tyroshi
now
merchants,
even the High Septon, the Faith, they've gone to get money, and he's a haggler, man. He's getting his money.
Harking back to what you just said, I mean, the Faith dealing in the gold and everything, like Grandmaster Pycelle is a great view of that, and so.
Ned's angrily just shocked. Like,
well, he says Aerys Targaryen left an overflowing treasury. How could you let this happen?
Jon Arryn would not allow this.
Yeah, Jon Arryn would not let Robert just.
And that's when they're like, "Yo, you don't understand. Like, Jon did.
He was wise.
He tried."
But
Robert doesn't listen to wise counsel.
He likes his parties and his tournaments and his feasts, and he hates counting coppers.
Which is exactly what he is. He's a bad king who just wants to
party and drink and fuck.
He wants to have a fraternity party for life.
Yeah, he's the frat bro of Westeros as king. It's just a shit show. So Ned says he's going to speak to Robert about this, and Renly says, you can talk all you want, but we should probably still make the plans. And Ned kind of snaps at him here, but then thinks to himself that he has to remember he's not in Winterfell, and where he's sort of coming from an elevated station. Here, he was but a first among equals, basically saying, yeah, he's the hand of the king, but they are all
on the same level as he
none
is.
of them are the king at this point. Like, they're all sort of serving Robert. And so Ned calls a halt to the meeting and says that they'll discuss it on the morrow, and just kind of takes his leave.
Himself. Yeah, just done. That's it.
And he heads outside, and outside people are still coming through the gates. It's this huge thing. And we learn that since the trouble on the King's Road with the children, the Starks and their whole household
have been riding well ahead.
Well ahead of the royal host.
Mm-hmm. And we've barely seen anything of Robert. He's been drunk in his wheelhouse since then.
Well, that's like rumors have it. That, he's been at the back in his wheelhouse. Just drunk.
So it says outside amidst the chaos of mud and horseflesh and shouting men, Ned just kind of starts dreading the arrival of Robert. He's not looking forward to it. Now, I like that because soon here, Littlefinger's going to surprise motherfucker him and guide him somewhere else. Yeah. But I like that they're mentioning chaos
already
right before Peter shows up. Yeah, Littlefinger.
So Ned is, like you said, dreading the king. He thinks that the king could only be a couple hours behind, but it's still too soon for Ned's liking. And then it says that Ned only had to look at Sansa's face to feel the rage twist within him again. He's thinking of the wolf and what basically he had to do to Lady and what it's done to the girls. And the last trek of their journey had been misery. Sansa blamed Arya and said it should have been Nymeria who died. And Arya was completely lost when she heard what happened to the butcher's boy. So Arya And I really like that description. Arya was lost when she heard what happened to Micah.
And she broods constantly over
she's gonna
it.
she's this little kid, she's gonna obviously blame herself. She asked him to be there. So like, yeah, you know, Sansa's mourning for the loss of her wolf, her pet, like that's entirely tragic. But Arya's mourning the loss of her friend, like a human being. So it's this weird comparison between the two. But Ned says Sansa cried herself to sleep. Arya brooded silently all day long, and Eddard Stark dreamed of a frozen hell reserved for the Starks of Winterfell.
Yo, what is?
Do you think with the old Kings of Winterfell and their crypts and everything, maybe that's part of the lore as well? Is that the unworthy go to some sort of frozen hell?
It says that he dreamed of a frozen hell,
like
reserved
the
for
heart of winter.
What is it that he is expecting that to be? Because that doesn't seem like something that we've ever heard or hear about.
Yeah, no, you know, it sounds like it's like almost like a folktale.
It's
like
he's aware of like this thing that the Lords of Winterfell are supposed to serve in the other, you know.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing. I don't know if.
And so that's it. I don't know if it's just referring to the crypts.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the frozen hell. It's just being immortalized in stone in the crypts of Winterfell forever. But regardless, from there he starts kind of.
He heads into
and he gets a ways off.
Yeah, he heads like through the Inner Bailey
towards trying to find where he thinks the Tower of the Hand.
Yeah, and Littlefinger suddenly appears in front of him from nowhere and says that he's going the wrong way, and then he says, "Follow me." So Ned hesitantly does and is led through this just winding route through courtyards and all up and down stairs and through this deserted corridor with empty suits of armor along the walls that Ned notes are Targaryen. They're black steel with dragons cresting their helms. And at this point, Ned notes that this is not the way to his chambers.
Yeah.
And Littlefinger jokes.
Date raped
by Littlefinger jokes. No, like, I'm taking you to the dungeons. I'm going to slit your throat, and then I'm going to seal your body up in a wall. Like, ha 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 ha. And it's like, all right, Littlefinger, chill. Like,
yeah, no shit.
That's like, you know, getting a girl home for the first time, and you just, like, turn and lock the door, and you're like, ha. Like,
gotcha.
Yeah, like, fuck. Chill, Littlefinger. So, he tells him, your wife awaits, and Ned is immediately suspicious and asks him, what game are you playing? Cats at Winterfell. And this is when Littlefinger gives him a little oh, and Ned notices his gray-green eyes are glittering with amusement, and he tells him, for the last time, come or don't. He said, yeah, for the last time, come or don't, and I'll keep her for myself, he tells Ned. And, like, that's just savage.
Yeah,
like,
man. The fact that he's willing to say that right to Ned Stark's face.
And so Ned says it, like, is thinking that he has no taste for these intrigues, but the more time he spends with him, the more he's realizing that they are the meat and mead for a man like Littlefinger. Littlefinger revels in this shit.
Yeah, this sneaky
and
little.
And really, very few people do it better than him. But they come up to a door, and Littlefinger opens the bar and lifts the bar, opens the door. Gesture Ned's through. And they're out on this rocky bluff high above the river. And Ned says, we're outside the castle. And Littlefinger says, you are a hard man to fool, Stark. Was it the sun that gave it away or the sky? And now this is when I wanted to get into... I think this is like the perfect caricature painting of Littlefinger, because we're told like basically that he's really likable. But he's one of the most dangerous men in Westeros. And that's, like, epitomized here. Where he's japing with all these people throughout this chapter, but he's saying some of the most dangerous, deadly shit.
He's towing the line.
Everything that he's talking about, it's not shit to be easily...
Trifled with.
Trifled and spoken about, even. Like, Brandon and Lyanna, like, that's harsh shit for Ned. Like, Catelyn, the way he's talking about his wife and children. Like,
he's like some... lame rapper talking about Eminem's daughter. Like, he just sits there and calls out whatever the fuck he wants.
Shots fired, Machine Gun Kelly. Yeah, no, it like, I think it really paints who he is, that he's so willing to toe this line just dangerously with these little quips and comments. But he tells Ned to continue following him, and then it says, with that, he was over the side of the cliff, descending as quick as a monkey. Like, so he's spry. I immediately thought of Bran. The one
how quick he can move.
Yeah.
He was referred to as a monkey before in one of his chapters already.
Like it was just for some reason I just immediately flashed to Bran that there's this interesting just
kind of comparison to that like so Ned takes a bit of time to get down the hill.
Yeah, Ned takes a lot.
When he gets down there, stupid ass Littlefinger's. He's
relaxing on a rock, eating an apple, which is almost down to the core. And
everyone always talks about the fruit.
Here I thought of the peach, Renly's peach, and just, it's supposed to, I think, represent the enjoying life, but here I think it's ironic. And he tells Ned that you're growing old and slow, Stark, but no worry, we ride from here, and there are 2 horses waiting for him, so they trot out, and then they enter the city again. And Baelish stops them in front of this shoddy 3-story building that's, they can hear laughter and music coming.
And Littlefinger's like, so... Here's your wife.
Here's your
Ned's
wife.
like, you motherfucker.
Yeah, they're at a brothel.
So, do you think, and I know we don't try to do this often, I feel like this here scene in the book was partial inspiration for D&D, the HBO series producers, inspiration for Jon Snow pinning Littlefinger in the crypts.
Well, Ned straight up does this.
Well, and also in the...
So, I think it was a callback, a direct callback.
All over, all the way.
Easy question. Check. Done.
Suck a dick.
So, Ned's pissed. And he grabs him and puts the dagger under his chin. And that's when someone calls out to him. He speaks the truth, my lord. No. And Ned turns. And it takes him a minute. But this is Sir Roderick. And Ned is just completely flabbergasted at this point. He sheathes his blade. They go inside. And they enter this big common room where it's a whorehouse. Yeah. Ton of hot sexual stuff is happening. X-rated. And no one really takes note of Ned. So they go upstairs, they go to the 3rd floor, and Catelyn is inside. And she cries out when she sees him, and she embraces him fiercely. And Littlefinger closes the door and says, oh, good, you recognized her. Still just being a fucking shit. And she asks about the girls, and Ned...
she mentions that... No, in a second. She mentions how she's aware of what happened with the girls on the road.
Littlefinger's been giving her reports, and she asks about the girls, and Ned says they're good. Both are mourning and full of anger.
Yeah, and then he kind of questions if it's about Bran.
Like, why are you here? What's happening? On? Yeah, he goes into this.
She says it is Bran, but it's not what you think it is about Bran.
Yeah, he even asks, where are we? And Littlefinger explains, can you think of a less likely place to look for Catelyn Tully than in a brothel? I've kind of thought this out. And then he says, and since I own the place, it's been pretty easy to make the arrangements, so don't you worry about it. And this is when Ned notices her hands as well, and he starts freaking out about that. How did this happen? What happened? And she presents him the dagger, and then she just lays it all out here. Everything from the fire in the library tower to... her journey to King's Landing and Littlefinger. And Ned is blown away, and his first thought is that Bran's wolf saved his life. And then he thinks on Jon saying, your children were meant to have these pups. And then he was thinking
about how he just killed ladies.
It gets dark quick, and he says, and he just killed Sansa's. And then he thinks, if the gods sent them, what folly has he committed?
Yo. And so I was really wondering if this has anything to do, again, with that cold, frozen hell reserved for Starks. They sent these wolves, and I just killed this one. He was getting this overwhelming feeling, but he couldn't tell if it was guilt or fear. Fear of the gods' wrath for interrupting their plans of these vessels they sent to assist the Starks.
Yeah, Ned Stark's going through some shit. And so he slams the dagger down on the table, trying to bring his thoughts back to Bran. And he thinks, why would Tyrion want Bran dead? He has no reason. Bran's never wronged him. And he starts pacing, and he starts thinking about the Queen, if the Queen knows. And he starts thinking about Robert, and he refuses to believe that Robert has any knowledge.
And then kind of realizes how easy it was for Robert
the
to
Targaryen children
send hired
blades after Daenerys, and even the Butcher's Boy, the way when Micah was brought back, the king had nothing to say about the Butcher's Boy, this innocent, truly,
which is what the real trial should have been about.
Definitely.
Was the fact that this boy was murdered while Joffrey's arm was cut.
Yeah.
Seriously?
It says he could still hear Sansa pleading, as Lyanna had pleaded once. Promise me.
Now, I think that's going to be a big foreshadowing for bringing up Rhaegar here in another few chapters, subtly, that they mention Lyanna, and now they're going to follow Martin.
Specifically Lyanna pleading.
Yes.
But Littlefinger says it's likely that Robert doesn't know, and he says Robert is practiced at closing his eyes to things he would rather not see. And actually, I misspoke. This is when Ned thinks of the butcher's boy, because he has no reply to what Littlefinger says, and he thinks of Micah being brought back and how Robert had nothing to say
about it. Yeah.
But Littlefinger says this accusation of itself is treason. We could be killed for even discussing this. You can't just present this shit. Yada yada yada. We need proof. This dagger is not proof alone. Yeah. And Ned kind of says, "Look, we have the dagger." And
Littlefinger mentions
shuts it down,
tossing it into the water.
Yeah, forget about it.
And I feel like that's just him boasting. Oh yeah, just get rid of it. That's what he has right now as the spur for starting the War of the Five Kings.
Well, I mean, his logic is also pretty sound because he's sort of doing the same thing. He tells him that the imp will turn it on you and say that the dagger was stolen from Winterfell, which was pretty much what happened.
And with the assassin not being alive, there's no one to counter.
Yeah, exactly. That. So Ned can't forget it, and he will not. And he tells Littlefinger that I am Lord Stark of Winterfell. My son was attacked and yada yada yada. I'm not gonna let this go. Littlefinger really doesn't give a shit what Ned thinks, and they kind of have this little back and forth again. But he says, I will try to keep you alive for Catelyn's sake. I've never been able to refuse her anything. And that's when Catelyn tells us that she told Peter everything about their suspicions about Lysa and Jon Arryn. Which, I mean, do you imagine that he got a boner there? Because I imagine that he got a boner there. Because that was his plot. And she's just feeding it right.
We're believing everything that
that's
you
it, man.
Everything that you told us, I'm eating up.
Yeah, she is just groveling and buying it hook, line, and sinker. Yeah. So I imagine for a man like Littlefinger that the desk rose a couple inches, even though he's standing, because it's just going perfectly for him. It's so perfect, but. So yeah, Catelyn says that Ned's not a fan of that either, but he realizes that they're going to need the help here. King's Landing is much too big a beast for him to try to tackle on his own.
But then Ned thinks that this is not the first time he's been forced to make common cause with a man he despised. I think that's the Rhaegar. And absolutely. So it's him saying, when I first was heading into that tower,
I was ready to kill him.
I hated everything.
I was going to gut him from balls to brain.
But then to immediately be forced to see the other side of things.
Yeah.
There was no
rape. It was love.
He was forced to.
And that's what I love most about how tragic that whole situation. Rhaegar and Lyanna couldn't really have announced that they were in love. And so it can be love. They could not have announced it and then had a happily ever after, because that's just the way politics works. Rhaegar wouldn't have been able to really leave Elia publicly. Lyanna was betrothed to...
Well, especially because it's going to affect the Dorne relationship.
Well, that's what I mean. If they went about it publicly, there is no way it would have ended well. So they had to do it and it's so tragic, story-wise, it's just fucking perfect the way it all kind of falls into line.
Yeah, it's brilliant writing.
Yeah,
just the way he does
it. Again, it just... Ned asks about Varys and what Varys knows.
Which, assuming the way she worked with Littlefinger, she has to immediately say he knows everything, but not because of me. Mm-hmm. It wasn't me.
Yeah, you didn't marry a fool, Lord Stark.
Well, you told,
which I like.
I think it's funny.
Well, they're both playing the fool.
Well, that's it.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
So she
which calls back to his who's the fools and flatterers. Well, you're
definitely.
Also one of the fools.
Ned's
here.
Playing the fool
definitely,
here.
Because he won't flatter. He's not that kind of guy.
Absolutely.
So that's what's funny is when we're thinking about it, we're seeing it from his point of view, forgetting that he falls into that category.
But Littlefinger speaks up here and says, "Don't worry about Varys. I've got basically his balls in my hand, if you will, and I can handle him."
Yeah, Kat's convinced that he's using dark arts and shit.
Yeah, she doesn't trust Varys at all. But Ned starts thinking on the Lannisters and the way the Queen was so satisfied about Lady and finding that they had another wolf they could kill, and Jon Arryn and the Butcher's Boy and Bran's fall, and the Mad King dying in a pool of his own blood at the foot of the throne. And it's just, he's just getting these ominous feel there's something afoot. There's a lot of moving parts here.
So Littlefinger had mentioned that you don't have to worry about Varys because he has his balls, if he actually had any, in the palm of his hand.
Yeah.
but then he goes on to say, am I jumping ahead?
No.
Where he says that if that pie is opened, the little birds will sing, and Varys will not like that. Do you think he has any substance?
I think he's boasting.
Boasting 100%.
I don't. I think he might have some small thing on Varys that he thinks is large.
It sounds like I almost feel like Martin's using that little birds singing, thing because that's what Varys says.
Yeah.
And so Littlefinger's like, if I use that and claim, oh well, if that opens up, then everything's gonna break down for him. When he has no way of accomplishing that.
I think Baelish is full of shit here, just sort of trying to
keep them on track for his gain instead of.
But Ned says that he would like Kat to return to Winterfell to sort of strengthen their position there, and Kat says she had hoped to see the girls before she left, but both Ned and Littlefinger agree that this isn't a good idea.
On board,
and she gets it, and so Littlefinger is going to leave to give them a minute to say goodbye. And Catelyn runs over and thanks him and trusts him as a brother.
Boner number 2.
And Ned even says, "You have my thanks," which Littlefinger replies with, "Oh, there's a treasure."
Yeah, no kidding.
So he leaves, and this is when Nat tells Catelyn to go back to Winterfell and gather Helman Tallheart and Galbert Glover, and they're to take 200...
100 men each.
200 each. Bowmen each.
No, 100 to total 200.
Oh, okay. 200. Yeah. So 200 bowmen to fortify Moat Cailin. And then Lord Manderley is to shore up and strengthen defenses at White Harbor.
Yeah,
Ned is prepping for war.
Yeah,
here.
he's aware that this could lead to some serious implications. He also then goes on to say, from this point on, he wants a strong watch kept on Theon Greyjoy. What sucks though is that it's not because he thinks Theon is going to do anything.
They have need of his father's
They want to
fleet.
make sure he's not going to get snatched up and be able to used as a hostage for somebody else, and so he wants to keep him there.
Yeah, and so the word war sort of scares Catelyn.
Freaks her right
and
out.
Ned immediately is like, I don't think it will come to that, but we need to be prepared. First, he has to play out this fool's masquerade as the way he's supposed to. He thinks he's sort of got a take on what's happening here, and Ned is just so far lost. So, we're seeing him try to scramble up the side of this cliff, with just no footing. He thinks he's ahead, and he really isn't. And it says that if he finds out that the Lannisters killed Jon Arryn, if, and Catelyn says, all right, so yeah, what if? And he says, well, if I find proof, then I take it to Robert. And this is how he sort of closes out the chapter. He says, I'll take it to Robert, and I have to pray that he is the man I think he is and not the man I fear he's become. And that's where we leave Ned. I don't even think that it's a matter of if Robert's the man. It's just Ned.
He is there. He's at that point.
He wants proof of Jon Arryn's death because he thinks it has something to do with the Lannisters. He's not even thinking of heritage at this point.
Right. He's so early.
He's so far off the ball. The Lannisters had nothing to do with Jon Arryn. The man is right in front of you. And you think that you're aware that there's a fool's masquerade going on, and you have to play it out the way you're expected to. You already are, and in a way where you think you're reacting
he's just
in ways
being led on.
Ned is so naively playing the game.
Well, it doesn't help that Catelyn kind of threw a cork in the whole thing anyway. She's certainly not helping being there and trusting Littlefinger immediately. Well, and that's it, because she's the one that's provided a lot. Just by being there, has provided confirmation that they're buying into Littlefinger's story that he's sent up with Lysa. She's already under the impression that it's the Lannisters, so he's able to sway her that much more just because of his pull in the city and how he was able to be the first one to speak to her when she arrives and gather all this information. It's it's like the cops going into an interrogation before the lawyer shows up, and he's able to get all this extra stuff that you shouldn't be saying before you have a chance to speak with the legal representative.
Yeah, she didn't even have the lay of the land before Littlefinger was...
to immediately trust him, even as, not that they trust him, but to trust him as much as they already do.
She told him everything about Lysa and Jon Arryn.
Everything.
If he just went to Queen Cersei with that, that alone is enough for some suspicious activity.
Yeah, done.
I'm sure Lysa's done, there you go. So, inductee, you got one? I got one. Mine's going to King Robert for just saying, like, fuck this shit, I'm getting drunk, and then for not showing up to the council meeting and riding around with Barristan and just, you know, probably talking about making the 8 and shit.
Making the 8.
They're having a good
right.
time, so.
Barry's the boss.
Like, I feel you, Robert. I wouldn't want to be engaged in this bullshit either. This is a lot of tomfoolery going on. So you are surrounded by fools and flatterers, and so I don't blame you for just kind of wanting to get drunk in your wheelhouse, especially after your kid just had a huge confrontation with your bestie's kid, and now your wife is pissed and shit's shitty. So get drunk in that wheelhouse and bring some of it over here to the Brotherhood for the week.
So I think this week, as much as the dumb stuff I was saying was caused by her, I'm going to bring Lady Stoneheart in a little early. Because after all the shit, you know, her betrothed Brandon, who she really wanted to be with, is, you know, killed by melting below the neck. Anyway, but I forget where I was saying. I'm trailing off here and forgetting where I was going with this. After all that shit, she still, you can see how much she cares for Ned, how much she's fallen for him, and she truly does love Ned now.
And she's comforted by him.
You know, she got there, and she is looking out for the best. In all ways, she really is exactly like Cersei. Everything she's doing is for her children. She's doing it in a, you know, much more calculated way than Cersei. Well, not more calculated, because they're both very calculated, but in just a more morally correct in her mind way, a very northern way. She's, you know, not just doing too subtle of stuff.
So
but
Catelyn believes in honor.
Yeah, exactly. She's got much more honor in the way she's going about it, and so to go to the lengths she is for Bran and to assist her husband, and now she plans on going and helping him raise banners and stuff. You know, she's going to do her duty. That's her plan. Sure, Tyrion coming across her path doesn't really help things there. But, you know, that was her intentions, and I have no doubt that she would have done that the second she arrived in Winterfell, had this not occurred and forced her to go to the Vale.
I mean, besides for her catatonic moment with Bran, Catelyn handles some shit here in the first book. So, So I'm going to bring Catelyn in. Catelyn,
this chapter.
What up?
So,
write
to us. Let us know who you would like to induct into the Brotherhood for this chapter.
Yeah.
We really enjoyed reading this one a lot.
Yeah, this was a good
really
chapter.
Good one. Next is going to be Tyrion. What?
3.
3. Cool. So
up at the wall again.
If you're rereading, he's going to be up at the wall.
Bring your parka.
We just had some Jon action up at the wall, so now we'll see what's happening from the lower height level of the wall point of views. After that is Arya 2, I think.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you're rereading, let us know if you have any thoughts.
We're getting in it, guys. We're getting
in it. It's getting deep as fuck.
So anyway, yeah, you can hit us up on all our social medias. We have our Twitter, which is @MannersWithout, our Facebook, facebook.com/Brotherhood Podcast. You can hit us up on Instagram @BrotherhoodWithout. You can also find us on iTunes and Spotify.
The Gmail Without Manners Brotherhood @gmail.com. And, of course, our Patreon, patreon.com/withoutmanners. We appreciate every one of you guys listening and writing into us. We're having a blasty still. So, yeah, hit us up.
We're pretty good into book 1. And it's just the story's getting more and more deep and exciting and riveting, and we're excited to continue forth. So join us, one of us.
Truth.
Google gobble,
Both
gobble.
of us. Google gobble. That's a good one.
I know.
All right.
I said it.
Anyway, we'll catch you on the next one, guys. Valor de Harris.
Peace.